Hello everyone, greetings from PayTap's technical support team. In this series, you will learn how to integrate with PayTaps through our PT2 API endpoints. And we will walk you through the fourth integration type, which is the own form. For the purpose of this series, we have created a very simple Laravel project to walk you through the integration process. But feel free to follow the steps in this series with your own project, whatever the programming language or the frameworks used to integrate with PayTaps. So, let's get started. In this video, we are going to learn more about the required parameters to initiate an on-form payment or a payment of the on-form integration type. So, let's get started. The first thing you should know is that you can find the full details for this part inside PayTap support portal under the article called the on-form APIs Integration Manual. From the integration manual, if we navigated to step 3 over here, initiating the payment, then part 2, initiate the payment, we will find a full dedicated solution article that will guide us through what is the endpoint that we should use, the minimum required parameter, the available optional parameters, and the request and response payload that we can use or that we should have at the end of this or at the end of knowing this. So for this video, we just want to learn about the minimum required parameters. So if we navigate over here, we are going to learn more about them, and each of them actually will have a dedicated solution article. So for now, or for the first thing, we have the 7 required parameter for any payment initiated by PayTaps, which is the profile ID, the transaction type, the transaction class, and then the cart details. Now, for the profile ID, it is of course your profile ID, and it's a source of your identification, and it's also a key in authentication your request. So your profile ID can actually be found inside your merchant dashboard, and if you don't know how you can do that, you can check the solution article mentioned here, how to get your account information from PT2 dashboard. This solution article will guide you through how you get your merchant ID and your profile ID. Now for the next parameter, we have the transaction type and the transaction class, which is actually identify the type of the transaction or what will happen in this transaction. So for example, for the transaction type, we have a dedicated solution article called What is Transaction Type that will contain a clarification for all PayTaps transaction types and the differences between them. So for this video, we are going to only use 2 transaction types, which are the sale and the OS transaction type, and simply these are the transaction types used to initiate a payment for deduction and amount from the customer. The only difference here, and when using the sale transaction type, the amount of the transaction will be deducted directly from the customer bank. Okay. As for the OS transaction type, the amount will be deducted from the customer card or the customer account, but it will be held or authorized inside the customer bank until you and the merchant either capture it to your account or void it back to the customer account. So we are only going to use one of these transaction type, which is the sale or the OS, and mainly we are going to use the sale transaction type. Still, if you want to learn more about the differences, you can check our solution article, What is Transaction Type? Now, for the transaction class, the same case, we are going to have 2 transaction class throughout this series, which is the ecom and the recurring. Of course, the ecom will be used for the normal transaction types. As for the recurring, it will be totally clarified in the token-based transactions. So just for now, we are going to use the sale transaction type and the ecom transaction class, and you can check more about them in the solution article. Now, going forward now, we have the cart details. Now, for the cart details, we have the first 2, which is the cart ID and the cart description. The cart ID and the cart description actually are dedicated for your own details. It is required, but still you can specify them with whatever the string that you want to use, but still they have their own specification. So for each one of them, you can check its own dedicated solution article. It would contain its specification, its validation rules, so it must be a string. Its max length is, for example, here in the card description, it's 128 characters. For example, the cart ID is only 64 characters, as you can see here. So these are just for your own sake, but still require details. Add the cart details, all is required. Now, for the next one, which is the card currency, this will be the currency that the payment will be initiated in. So that means that this currency must be enabled in your PayTaps profile. So if you navigate it to your PayTaps merchant dashboard over here, let's get back, for example, to my profile, and I need to sign in. So I need to have a currency over here inside the profile menu under the payment method currency. So I am only allowed to use one of the currency that I have enabled. Now, if you want to enable a currency that you don't have currently, you can contact customer care at paytaps.com, or you can contact your account manager. Now, these are the card currency, and of course, finally, the card amount will be the payment amount, or the amount of this payment, the amount that will be deducted from the customer. So these are the first 7 required parameters. Additionally, we have 2 required objects for the own form integration type. These required objects are the card details and the customer details. The card details are very simple. It is the details on the card of the customer card. So it will be the band number, the CVV, the expiry month, and the expiry year. Now, for the customer details, we have all the customer details required here, as the name, the email, the phone, the street, the city, the state, the country, the zip, and the IP address of the customer. Now, let's see how this looks inside our project, but before, let's take a look at the full request payload. Now, the full request payload should look like this. We have here a sample request payload of the 7 required parameters, the customer details object, and the card details object. So this is exactly what we have generated inside the data wrapper over here, clarified in the next video. We have the 7 required parameters, okay? We have the profile ID we generated from our environment file. Of course, you can fill it directly over here, but for sake of being more secure, we have injected it inside our environment file and use it inside here in the payload. As for the transaction type and the transaction class, we have added them to the configuration file named paytabs. We have created a configuration file, and we have the transaction type and transaction class over here. So whenever I need to change the transaction type or the transaction class, we can change them immediately from here, and it will affect all of our transactions. Now, after the transaction type, transaction class, we have the card details and the card details. Now, of course, the tokenize is not yet required, so we can use it in another video. The same for the callback and the return, they are not required. We are going to learn about them in the other videos, but we will just going to leave like the callback and the return over here to see the response of this payment, how it will look. Now, again, let's get back to our required parameters. So as you can see here, I have generated the cart details from the front end. So this is not actually the safest way to generate your cart details. So we are using this just as a sample, but if you want to do this in a higher secure level, what should be done is that you should generate this card details from your own system, your own backend, so that it gets not interfered or get changed when it being sent from the front end to the back end. So you may be just sending like an ID or a product ID, and once this product ID received to your back end, you can then from this product ID generate the cart ID, the cart currency, the amount, and the description. Now, for the customer details, we have generated, of course, up there inside the customer details object, and we have also generated over here from our customer details form, which contain all the details. Now, finally, and most importantly, of course, the card details, which will be totally secured, validated from your side. So you must make sure that it's secured and validated. You must make sure that it get not any kind of malware or any kind of theft during it's sent to PayTaps. So just make sure that you have secured and validated these card details, and once you are secured and validated, you will pass them over here. So now the next step, of course, these are the required parameters. By the way, we cannot use these two parameters actually I'm going to commit them. Okay, we cannot use them at all, and you will be redirected to PayTap's response space. We are just using them to handle the payment response. So now actually I'm going to initiate a payment with not using any of these details. I'm going to get back over here to reload my page. Okay, fulfill the customer details. Okay, I can leave the shipping details empty, as you can see, as it's not required. And now I'm going to take one of my test cards. I'm going to use actually let's use a non 3D enroll card this time. I'm going to paste it over here, validate the month, the year, security code. And as you can see, once the checkout is done, it will be redirected back to your store over here. Normally, nothing will happen. Just the using of the return is callback is ways of handling the payment response. Of course, we are going to get to it inside the next video, step 5 and step 6. We are going to learn about the return in step 5. We are going to learn about the callback in step 6. But for now, we just wanted you to learn that you can initiate a payment using only the required parameters. These are for handling the payment response. Now that we have initiated a payment using the required parameters, we can move to the next video.